Welcome back. As we said, Americans are waiting to hear what President Clinton has been telling the grand jury in Washington. The opinion polls suggest that the majority of Americans still approve of Mr. Clinton's leadership. But if he does admit to lying, then all that could change. ITV's Robert Moore reports from Washington.
After 1,473 days, this investigation and the media coverage of it has reached its peak. As Ken Starr arrived for the presidential testimony, all of the networks broke into their normal programs to bring every detail to America's households.
The waiting is over. At this moment, President Clinton is testifying.
But in Washington, as they watch the events unfold, and across the country, many Americans say they want this legal and political battle that so often resembles a soap opera now to be brought to a close.
I just wish people would look at it from a point of view. Every man makes a mistake.
What does Monica Lewinsky have to do with Whitewater? I've never been able to figure that out.
I think the whole thing is a big farce because we all play, and it's not only Clinton.
But Mr. Clinton's political enemies are circling. George W. Bush and other leading Republicans say this White House has now become a national embarrassment.
I think it's very important for people who are in leadership positions to behave responsibly if we expect our children to behave responsibly. I'm embarrassed for our country.
But many Americans appear to be making a distinction between the president's moral conduct and his performance in office. So the polls continue to show a remarkably high approval rate both for the president and for Hillary Clinton. But even if legally he extricates himself, politically, his probable address to the American people later tonight will be another crucial test. Robert Moore, News at 10, Washington.
Russia gave up the fight to protect its currency today by loosening the exchange rate controls on the ruble. Its value plummeted immediately. The impact was quickly felt in shops where prices of imported goods began to rise. Here's our Moscow correspondent Mark Webster.
President Yeltsin's economic credibility was in tatters this evening after he reneged on his promise to defend the Russian currency. Prime Minister Sergei Kirienko will now find it even more difficult to steer his reform measures through a fractious parliament. And even the man who negotiated Russia's latest £18 billion loan from the West admitted the government had failed.
The fundamental problem that for the last 2 weeks we had to accept that market confidence was not built again as we hoped it would be.
As disgruntled Russians found they could get no foreign currency from the banks, there were warnings that the lower ruble will mean imports are even more expensive. And despite assurances to the contrary, worries that Russia will default on some of its huge international debts. That could spell ruin for hundreds of Russia's smaller banks and massive disruption of the domestic economy. Analysts fear the country faces a further period of economic and political turmoil. Mark Webster, News at 10.
The American balloonist Steve Fossett is heading home tonight after his fourth attempt to fly around the world ended in failure. Fossett's life raft was picked up in the South Pacific by a New Zealand Navy tanker after his balloon had plummeted into the sea. We return now to the aftermath of the bombing in Omagh. ITN's Dermot Murnahan, who has strong family ties with the town, has been talking to its people about the day their community was brutally shattered. He found a sense of shock and despair, but also a determination that the peace process must not be allowed to die. For some victims, their ordeal was captured forever on amateur video, taken moments after the bomb went off. Here's tonight's special report.
In this Omagh restaurant, every untouched plate of food, every hastily abandoned knife and fork, every empty baby high chair tells a story. Nobody knows the eventual fate of the dozens of shoppers and staff who poured out of here on Saturday and calmly walked straight into a horrific trap. Marina Toole was one of the restaurant's waitresses who only minutes before had been serving cakes to customers.
She was maybe one of the, I suppose in a sense, the fortunate ones that wasn't actually hit by any shrapnel or whatever. So that left her in a sense that when she was able to get up off the ground, she's seen everything and she can remember everything.
Another ordinary person caught on camera in extraordinary circumstances was butcher shop worker Irene Cook. She rushed to help when she heard the bomb go off.
I ran up and the first one that came on was a young girl and she was bleeding from the head, and I got her down and saw a man lying. Somebody was attending to him, and there was a man coming with a young boy in his arms and his hair was all burnt. I asked a policeman to get me a car or something to get the girl out to the hospital.
The scene was just absolute pandemonium. People lying everywhere, people crying, people lifting up the wounded, people calling for help, and then people saying, "Father, come here, Father, come there," because as you know, in the Irish scene, people want their clergy with them in crisis moments.
Father Mullin was on the scene in minutes. He's convinced that Oma's community spirit will remain unshaken.
We mightn't need to be put together, we are together, but it'll just reinforce the bonds that are there.
Tony Cairns has no idea when his restaurant will reopen. With funerals to come and half his staff injured, earning a living seems very unimportant indeed. In my lifetime, I've experienced two sides of Oma. Personally, I have extremely happy memories of childhood visits here to my grandparents and discovering a warm and welcoming town. And Oma will always remain that. But those personal memories are now overlaid with professional ones of a town forever scarred, of a town which now tops the long list of Northern Ireland's human tragedies. Dermot Murnahan, News at 10, Oma.
Soccer and Premier League champions.
Yeah.